So here we are. I'm looking for some view which would worth painting and would have educational points for you. I took a walk around. I actually stopped a few places and then I decided that I will come to this place where we have such a much of contrast in colors. So bright green in the background and very warm evergreen needles at the bottom. Also water which is muddy and with some shadow on it and reflections, and evergreens which are any season are great to paint. It doesn't matter if it's snow, spring, summer or fall. As you see, I'm starting here and speed is twice of regular. I did that specifically for YouTube video so you could briefly see what was happening on that day in plein air. And if you're interested, on confidentartist.com you can watch this video for a whole hour length at normal speed with more of a decision making of choosing subject and composition to paint, and of course drawing part. Right now I'm doing pretty much drawing, but I'm transferring already some idea which I've got and I placed on my paper. So I'm using warm tones like purples and some greens. I love a mix of olive green and like manganese violet. And then if I need, let's say, do tree trunks, I'm using, as you see, burnt sienna. Yes, let's go over my color palette here, which is pretty much the same as I've been using on previous sessions for these videos. From left to right, we have here alizarin crimson, then that violet one is manganese violet, then cobalt blue, and if I had ultramarine blue would be no problem either. Then I have cerulean blue, then I have viridian green, then olive green which is very dark, and then burnt sienna, raw sienna, ochre yellow, pale, cadmium yellow, cadmium orange, cadmium yellow actually lemon, cadmium yellow dark, then cadmium orange and cadmium red. So if you are just around those colors, it's great. Just make sure you don't use hues because in mixes you'll have more troubles. And I'm just doing sort of block in my canvas panel, which this time I used a little bit more advanced, also 5x7, and the vertical format would be 7 inches by 5 inches of a Centurion oil primed canvas, which I overall like a lot, and surface is ready to use immediately, but of course I had to tone it and to warm color which is close to the needle, evergreen needle, the spruce trees and pine trees needles bed on the floor of the woods. So as you see, I'm drawing, and also I had to move my tripod. Actually, I will need to move my tripod because in woods quite often light coming through branches. Of course, it changes its position. When I was standing, I've been in shadow, and then like 15 minutes later, I've been in full sun. So with a little compromise for arrangement of those tree trunks, I had to move. So I'm showing you here an image. So even when you watch at the screen, I suggest you to squint. When you draw and paint, I suggest you to squint again, so you kind of see more simplified view of scenery when you look at the real view and squint, and easier divide those bigger shapes into kind of bigger groups of values, like 5-6 groups of values, no more than that. When you look at your painting and squint, it also helps you, because sometimes we apply some sort of cool texture, and then I was noticing that then I do not want to get rid of it because it looks great. But if it's blocked in stage and that texture is too, I mean, the texture of playing of brush, dry brush over canvas, I mean, if color is wrong, I need to correct it. No matter how good is texture, if the color is wrong, value is wrong, I should get that area reworked. So when I squint, I'm not distracted by those happy accidents, like in quotes, because they're not happy, because they are still not great. So now, as you see, I'm trying to make kind of masses bigger, and in my entire composition I almost forgot about that reflection, which is, as you see, is different from the real color of tree. See, the water in river was muddy, kind of greenish brownish, and that reflection really explains, I mean, tells you in the painting that the water is like that again and again. When we see a real view with eyes, we trust it with no questions, because that's our own eyes see that. When we see a painting, or someone is seeing painting, if something looks unusual, they would say, no, probably artist did a mistake. So that is why I love realism. I paint what I see to the point where when it has a most expressive way, but not away from reality. Of course, I tweak a little bit composition. Sometimes get trees closer. Sometimes let's say if I have 3 trees and they're all in the same distance one from another, I would group 2 of them closer, like move them, and between second and third I'd rather have some sort of bigger distance, so composition and arrangement look more interesting. But the color wise, value wise, I try to follow it as close to reality as possible. So light on my palette is quite bright, and also light hits my shirt which I'm standing in, and it's not that color which is the best. Do you know what's the best color for painting outdoors in front of the canvas, especially when light condition makes you to be sunlit? Right, it's black color. It's not gray. Many people think that it's gray because it's neutral. No, black is the same neutral as gray, but the light reflection, which also change perception of values, especially outside. You don't want to have your canvas in direct light. Even in shadow, it's a lot of light down there, and then you have extra light source, your shirt or your dress or your maybe coat. So you don't want that excess, because once you bring painting home, light will be many times less intense in the room, and colors and values, everything will be too much shifted. Of course, we want to paint something which looks great, and since we show our paintings indoors, we need to count and think about that. I like how with this way of painting tree trunks, I have that reflection of a sunlight from the floor of the forest. So on those pine trees, kind of reddish bark, that's good. And in shadows, that sand and whatever those needles sand turns to be more to grayish color. So I really feel that I like what I see on my painting compositionally better than what I see on this I've seen standing there, and then you could see on this photograph which I took at that time. And also I'm trying to play with the best what I can see there, plus with some sort of improvement, again not with lights and values, but within that corridor of what I can allow myself as a realist. I think I finally covered all my entire surface. Even though it's not large, it sounds maybe funny, but even 7 by 5, since we divide entire space to pretty much the same amount of areas as if we've been working on a 16 by 20 inches canvas. So with a separate brush strokes, wider ones, we did block in, and now it's time to refine some lines before I get to details, catching details, placing details, trying to understand how much details we want and what areas will be generalized. For instance, these branches of spruce tree, it's so complex and so patchy. If I paint it exactly as I see, I don't think that will be a good representation of a spruce tree, even though I see it there. I look at the real spruce tree there and I squint. And I try to merge and create bigger and smaller groups of that green needles masses. And I have to play with that. Of course, I have some influence from the way as what I know about spruce tree, about its shape, the way as it looks on paintings of other realist artists, let's say on Leviton's paintings. And here I have some bias. It's sort of permitting bias, like almost intentional, but still I would think that if someone, American artists with the same approach paint in Russia, they would paint spruce trees as they've been painted by American artists, the way as they love it and seen that since childhood or since the time they studied painting that type of woods. And when I come to America, when I paint here in America, I paint the way as Leviton have seen that, because for me that's the way as the spruce trees live and exist. So for my aesthetical perception, I want to correct these branches, so to simplify the way as they look at my heroes in art. When I find that lace like this of these spruce tree branches doesn't let me see what's behind it, but I still don't want to show there just randomly some patches here and there. In this photograph I cannot see well enough where the edge of the opposite bank of the river, where water stops and where reflection starts. But when I'm on site, that's the beauty of painting outdoors, my eyes can focus far and close. I see where is those details which are behind the tree. And I decided that I will cover some branches on the foreground tree and paint something but what's behind them, and then we'll work again on branches and add just a few of them to make a feeling that we have a spruce tree, we have branches and we can look through them and we can even see what's behind it. Don't you feel that I'm trying on my paint my real life experience rather than photo camera experience? That's my goal, to show more than photograph can show, to show it the way as I've seen there, or if you go there, the way as you will see it. So learning painting from photograph is good up to some point, but of course there is much more beyond the photograph. Sometimes people take video, and I like to take video as well, just to understand psychology of view perception. And yes, so a video at times is better not only for moving object, but also when a viewer moves and objects are still. You can kind of look through the object better than a still camera can show you. I'm glad that you can see my palette and the variety of greens I have down there. Many of them are in color range close to olive green, and when I need a little lighter value of that color, I'm not much using of white. I add there some yellow ochre, and then when it gets a little warmer than I want, I would add cerulean blue, not working much with the cobalt. I think, yes, obviously there is a big difference between cerulean blue hue, I mean not the hue, yes, the type of blue, and cobalt blue. So in this situation, when I mix browns, when I mix olive greens with the cerulean blue, I get much better representation of color, what I'm trying to catch. Also, my palette is in shadow because I had to move, and also my point where I was standing changed. That is why you probably can see at the stump of the tree which was cut. First stump I did not as prominent and sharp going to the right at the top of the stump. Second, there is like a root branch which gives good curve. When I was standing on one position, I've seen that kind of a loop, and I decided to pick it up. It's almost like a handle of a cup or of a teapot. And I like, so you have straight lines and you have curved lines, good contrast of lines and shapes. And also it's a part of S shape, which I quite often appreciate. Of course, A shape, not any type, but which is balanced by dimensions, angles, and a place where it's sitting. So right now I'm getting close to be satisfied how my river looks like. So reflection on the right looks good as well. It's a little deeper than you can see on photograph, but that was exactly how I've been seeing that, or you would be able to see that. Camera is camera. And flat objects like painting, a camera represents well enough, but the three-dimensional things where you have some depth and kind of different planes, yes, human eye sees differently. So now I'm trying to paint little sky holes here and there. So upper part of the spruce tree is quite dense. Of course, as always, it's not just linear process. I did, let's say, masses, then I did sky holes and outline, and it's done. No, it's finding perfect shape, good balance within those borders, which we have as borders of our painting, which doesn't exist in reality. Of course, doesn't exist in that view, which is right in front of me. That is why when I look at that tree, I perceive it as a whole. When I put detail, part of it on my painting, I need to find its beautiful piece, or at least show it the way it looks balanced. It looks like exactly as that tree. Maybe even give you smell of that tree, and bark of that tree shines the way as is there. And also, so to be being descriptive, not to describe every little thing in that view. Yeah, water gets better. Obviously, some darker. I mean, there is the water reflection closer to our feet because of the angle of reflection changes, rather than looking something which is in a distance, let's say where the cloud is and further. So intensity of light changes. So that's it. Let's look closer to a finished field study, which is in step 2 in my 4-step painting cycle on any view. Did you like it? I had a good time. So please like this video if you like it, and subscribe to my channel. And don't forget to visit confidentartist.com. There you will find a 1-hour version of work on it starting July 5th. See you next time.